always from the heart of the city, and now on demand 24/7 on the CHFI website. This is the soundtrack to a little superstition. And I'm Don Jackson, around the world on the internet. Mark Stevenson of the Associated Press, in an article in the May 12, 2008 issue of the Toronto Star, wrote, and I quote, "There is a legend that the ancient Maya possessed 13 crystal skulls, which, when united, hold the power to save the earth. A tale so strange and fantastic that it inspired the latest Indiana Jones movie." Unquote. The number 13 has always played a significant role in our lives, especially where superstition is concerned. Stevenson also writes, and again I quote, "One Smithsonian anthropologist and antiquities sleuth, Jane McLaren Walsh, has one of these skulls in her office. She claims in the 16 years she's sat near the thing, nothing of consequence has ever happened." Unquote. Maybe she has to wait until 2012. The number 13 for superstitious lovers and other strangers. From iTunes and CHFI.com. Madonna and Live to Tell, afraid her luck is about to run out, and Alicia Keys, If I Ain't Got You. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. An interesting thing took place late last night at 11:11 p.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month. It was, for many, a time to make a wish. One can only imagine what it would be like for wishes being granted in 2 years' time in 2011. The number 4 shares the same pronunciation as failure in the Shanghai dialect. 8 is a lucky number. Apparently in Cantonese, 8 sounds like prosperity. We in North America have a problem with the number 13. It is associated with bad luck. And yet the universe is about 13 billion years of age, and it seems to be doing fine. I do not know which to prefer, the blackbird whistling or just after. Wallace Stevens from 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. And I didn't know there were 13 ways of doing that. Did you know that horror writer Stephen King fears the number 13 and Friday the 13th? I guess you could call him triskaidekaphobic. Once again, it's Friday the 13th, and how was your day? You might feel a little embarrassed if you believe you shouldn't be walking under ladders or seeing a black cat cross your path on a Friday the 13th. But there are a lot of people who feel a certain unease about the date. In Italy, according to the Sunday Telegraph, the number 17 is a very unlucky number. Now, it may have something to do with the Roman numerals XVII and an anagram VIXI, which in Latin is the past tense of the verb to live. some thoughts on the number 13, and a few others this hour with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Jacksoul on a Lonesome Highway, and Elton John and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And there is a number 13 connection with The Wizard of Oz that I'll explain later. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Eric Maple, in his book Superstition and the Superstitious, wrote, "The symbolic number 7 crops up in the Chinese superstition that a ghost returns to its old home on the 7th night following death." Unquote. And this story was sent to me by a listener some years back. And I quote, "On June 13th, 1673, a samurai returning home from a battle had collapsed from his wounds. Alone and unable to raise himself, he accepted the end of his life and closed his eyes. He opened them again, and much to his surprise, he found himself in the arms of a woman, a healer by trade, attending to his wounds. She nurtured him back to health, and they became very close, but he had to return to his regiment. Before leaving, he made a promise that on June the 13th, the following year, he would return to see her. The following year, she prepared for his arrival, making sushi and brewing fine green tea. She waited all day, but there was no sign of him. Night had fallen. Refusing to give up, standing in the rain with tears, she waited. Urged by her mother to come into the house out of the rain, she agreed, but decided to look one last time. She turned around, and before her she saw him, but he seemed sad. She invited him into the house, offering what she had earlier prepared, but he refused to eat. He thanked her for her hospitality and went outside. Ready to leave, she asked him, "Why so soon?" He answered, "Because I am no longer part of this world. On my way to you, I was attacked by 3 men, and I was killed. But before I died, I asked the God of Wind to carry my spirit to you." Unquote. Thank you, Mark, for that wonderful story. A reverence so deep that he would cross the great gulf of ocean that separates life and death to honor a promise. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Diamond Rio with One More Day, Evanescence with My Immortal, and NSync, and This I Promise You. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Francis Bacon wrote, "There is superstition in avoiding superstition." How true. As Roberta B. Etter said in her book Tokens of Love, and I quote, "In the realm of love, traditions and superstitions abound. The location chosen as a trysting place carried great significance and had to be chosen carefully. Crossroads and bridges spelled bad luck, as did meeting near poplar trees, which foretold inconstancy. Instead, lovers wishing to remain true and constant should meet on a hillside, by a river or seashore, or deep in a grove of trees. Seeing a white horse or a black cat when walking with one's lover augured a wonderful marriage. A girl who fell in love upstairs was said to be headed for an early marriage, unquote. And if you remember the story of Elizabeth Barrett and Robert Browning, you'll remember that she was an invalid and kept a virtual prisoner on the upstairs floor of her father's house. When she met the poet Robert Browning, they fell in love rather quickly, and within a very short time, they eloped and fled to Italy, where they stayed for most of their married life. So maybe there's something to that superstition about a girl falling in love upstairs, headed for an early marriage. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. James Blunt, and You're Beautiful. And I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. As it said in the Reader's Digest edition, Why in the World? No superstition is so strong or so widespread as the belief that 13 is unlucky. From Argentina to New Zealand and Scotland to Siberia, the numeral 13 brings shudders of foreboding. Hotel guests refuse to take room 13, so hotels usually renumber them 12A or 14. Hospital patients feel they are doomed if they find themselves in bed 13, and some home buyers refuse to look at a house numbered 13 in a street. Office blocks commonly have no 13th floor. Many passenger aircraft have no row 13, and only a brave hostess would seat 13 at dinner. Triskaidekaphobia, fear for the number 13, is said to have come from Norse mythology. Odin's son Baldur, the god of peace and light, went to a banquet in Valhalla. Loki, god of discord, was an uninvited 13th guest. He tricked Hoder, the blind symbol of darkness, to shoot and kill Baldur with an arrow of mistletoe. The superstition gained pace after the Last Supper, when the 13 at the table included Judas. He was the first to quit the table and later hanged himself. Another superstition decrees that if 13 dine together, the first to leave will die before the year is out. At a dinner including royalty, the royal guests are always the first to rise from the table. For that reason, no royal dinner ever has a table of 13. Unquote. And it's interesting, Queen Elizabeth's train at her wedding in 1947 was 13 feet. You'd think she would have known better. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Jamie Cullum and the Wind Cries Mary, and Coldplay and Viva La Vida. And I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. The Wizard of Oz was first published in 1900. L. Frank Baum, the author, wrote 13 more Oz books. Didn't seem to do him any harm. In this superstition, the number 7 plays a significant role. Eric Maple, in his book Superstition, and the superstitious writes, and I quote, "A form of bewitchment, similar to the European witch bottle, was employed to compel the return of a faithless lover. In this case, the contents, which included 7 hairs from a black cat, 7 scales from a rattlesnake, and 7 bits of feather from an owl, were burned for 7 minutes on a fire, together with hairs and nail parings, and the hoped-for result was the production of 7 agonizing pains in the loved one's body, which were supposed to continue to rack him until he was prepared to return to the arms of his lady love." In the classic The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, the wizard Gandalf leaves a mark on the outside of the door to Bilbo's hobbit home, his dwelling in the Shire, and eventually 13 dwarfs arrive. Bilbo is beside himself as he tries to play the good host to these fabled inhabitants from deep beneath the mountains. And of course, they begin a journey that will eventually lead to the discovery of the fabled ring, the ring that lies at the heart of the trilogy, The Lord of the Rings. Was it luck or fate that he should find the one ring to control all others? And speaking of rings, did you know that there are 13 bathtubs in the White House? Friday the 13th, November the 13th, 2009. I hope your day is uneventful. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. I hope you will tell all your friends about Lovers and Other Strangers. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.